In this video, I'm showing you 3 quick layer masking hacks that will level up your masking skills and speed up your editing workflow at the same time. Because I've been teaching Photoshop for more than a decade, and these 3 tips always seem to create the biggest aha moments for Photoshop newcomers and experienced users too. The first hack is actually a collection of time-saving mini hacks that are actually going to save you hours in the long run when working with selections and masks, but for some reason, nobody seems to talk about these things. For example, when you've spent time making the perfect selection around a difficult object and you want to save it to use later, the normal way would be to save it as a channel in the channels panel. Well, did you know that instead of saving it in the channels panel, you can just add a new curves adjustment layer and the selection is going to be saved into its layer mask. And if you don't adjust the curve, it's just going to sit there happily, not affecting the image in any way. And then when you're ready to use that selection later, you can just load it up directly from the curves mask. Which brings us on to mini hack number 2, which is that you can hold Command or Control on the keyboard and then click on any layer mask, and the mask is going to be loaded as a selection. And this is great not only for loading saved selections like how I just showed you, but also for any other mask that you've spent time crafting which you want to reuse as is on another adjustment or layer. For example, let's say I've got this curves adjustment that has a luminosity mask on it that lets the curves affect only the highlights and then only within the sky. If I now want to add, say, for example, a saturation adjustment that affects only the highlights, only in the sky, then I could go through all the steps again to create the selection from scratch, or I can Command or Control click on the existing mask to load it as a selection, and then either brush through that selection like a stencil into another adjustments layer mask, or just add a new adjustment layer to preload its mask with that selection. And so that's saving, loading and reusing selections and masks. What if you want to copy a layer mask onto a layer that you've already created? In that case, you can just hold Alt or Option on the keyboard while dragging one mask on top of another to replace it. So these mini hacks are all about speed, and hack number 3 is going to improve the accuracy of your layer masks to eliminate problems like halos. But first, hack number 2 is more like a brain hack than a technique, because if you ever get mixed up when using a black or a white brush into a black or a white mask, then you know how frustrating it can be to struggle with something that's supposed to be simple. And I'm sure that it's because of how masking is normally taught. You know that old saying, white conceals, black reveals, black conceals, white reveals. Anyway, that saying, which every single introduction to layers and masking article or tutorial ever written in the history of the world gives as a way to remember which way around the black and the white are supposed to go, is completely useless. Why? Because how does it help? It's like saying, here's an amazing trick to remember which way around the black and white mask works. Just remember it. Yeah, thanks, genius. Instead, something my students tell me that does help is when I suggest that they think of layer masks as an invisibility cloak. So when you have black in the layer mask, it's cloaking the layer, but it's not just covering it up, it's making it invisible. So for this layer mask, whatever it's cloaked with black over here, it's invisible in the image over here. Now you might think, okay, Steve, that's great, but how do I actually remember if black or white is the cloaking color? And that's a good question. And the hint that I tell people is the fact that the word black sounds a lot more like the word cloak than the word white does. Black, cloak, black, clack. Yeah, anyway, you get the idea. So when you paint black, there's a lot of clicking and clacking. So when you paint black, you're cloaking the layer, making it invisible. And so now hack number 3 is one that you're going to find useful, especially, but not just exclusively, but especially if you use luminosity masking in your workflow. And I'll show you that in just a second. But first, if you've been trying to learn layers and masking for a while and you understand the concepts, but when it's time to actually use it on your own photos, you kind of freeze up, then the missing piece probably isn't just more information. It's consistent daily practice in small doses, especially when it's guided by someone who can point you in the right direction along the way. Kind of like those railings down the side of the bowling lane at the alley. If that sounds like something you're interested in and you finally want to crack the fundamentals of layers and masking in Photoshop, then jump on the notification list to join my upcoming 21-day online workshop that starts on March 6th. Now I only run this workshop once a year and there's only 21 spots available each time, so they're offered first to people who join the waiting list. So click that link in the description and pin comment to get on the list. But now here's hack number 3. Have you ever added a luminosity mask to an adjustment where the mask is meant to restrict the adjustment to a specific tonal range, but that range just isn't quite tight enough, meaning the adjustment still kind of spills over into some areas that you don't want it to spill into. Now, when you Alt-click or Option-click on the mask, it'll bring it up in the main window over here, and you can see the reason why it's spilling over. It's because of all of these greys that you can see in the mask. Now, because these grey areas are neither pure black or pure white, the adjustment is still coming through to some degree in between 0 and 100% in those areas. Now, to fix this, you could create a more perfectly isolated luminosity selection in the first place when building it in the channels panel, or if you have the pro version of my plugin, then in the selection previews, by intersecting or adding, subtracting with other selections. But that's not always necessary, because there's an 80-20 to be found by adjusting this mask directly using one of two simple methods. The first is by pressing Command or Control L on the keyboard to bring up a levels adjustment. When you adjust the levels to increase the contrast like this, it's going to affect the mask itself, not the image underneath. So you can eliminate these greys by increasing contrast to kind of tighten up the edges of the mask. But with that said, sometimes you won't want to do this across the entire mask. So what can you do then? Well, the quickest effective way to get rid of those specific grey areas is with the regular old dodge and burn tools directly into the layer mask like this. Yeah, just a word of warning with this, be careful, because the levels adjustment directly into the layer mask and with the dodge and burn tools, they're great ways to get a quick, decent result, but it's easy to overdo both and kind of destroy the accuracy of the edge that you're trying to improve. And dodging and burning too much or increasing contrast too much is literally going to change where the edge of the elements in the image and in the mask sit, so that when you use that edge as the boundary between what you're adjusting and what you're not adjusting, it will do things like create halos like this. So if you end up with halos like this for this reason or for any other, you could either go back to the drawing board and create the mask in a more accurate way. But for a quick way to remove halos, watch this next video.